It's beginning to look a lot like postseason football is at our door. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the newest edition of your favorite NFL podcast for the last 2.5+ years. I've completely forgotten how long ago it was at this point, but I believe it is around the 2.5 or more year range. Welcome back to the Sports Agents of Chaos podcast. And as you can tell by the title, holiday headlines. We rarely get these kind of headlines late in an NFL season, especially with some of the news. So we're going to have plenty to talk about in this episode of football. Thank you, NFL, for giving us content to help us in this dry spell of the winter months. Of course, I am the Iceman, leading proceedings, and joining me on this, our games master himself, and perhaps a man who is going to add a nice headline to his Wikipedia, his legacy, come season's end. But we'll talk about that much more later in the show. Justin, how we doing?
I'm doing well, man. How you doing?
I'm doing good. I had a relatively late night last night. Had tech issues at work, which is, as we know, always a fun thing. But the show must go on. Excuse me. The show must go on. The show went on last night. This show will go on. Of course, it'll be joined here soon enough by the Podfather himself. The Podfather running a little bit late. We know the million tasks that man has to go through just to get life working sometimes. So Rick will be joining us a little bit here later in the episode. As such, just like we did last time, in a situation like this, we're going to hold off on name that player. We're going to hold off on that just because it's always more fun when Rick is here alongside me, because like the polls he makes are pretty good, all things considered, especially if Justin has another D2 or D3 college alumni set up today. I'm going to need Rick's help on that one, to say the very least. So we'll wait for the Podfather for us to get to the games that we like to go with, which I don't mind because, Justin, we have a lot of news, honestly, to break down, all things considered. You know, we talk about this. Can you remember, Justin, now, because this is our third NFL season doing this, do you remember in the last 2 years if we had these kinds of headlines going into the closing weeks of a season this late? I don't think last year. I'm struggling to think back to 2022. I think this is pretty unique for what just the last like 2-3 years have been.
I don't know. It does seem like an abundance of news occurring right now. I mean, there's always like a few things that pop up right as the playoffs start to come into view, but I don't remember if it's this heavy of a news week this late.
Yeah, so it's a very unique thing for us to be able to have. So we're going to go through all these topics, and don't worry, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to go through in several directions with multiple of these topics, because some of these topics are in the short term, some of them go in the long term of a discussion. That's the beauty. We take the short and long approach in terms of viewpoints here. So that being said, let us begin our discussion of the NFL holiday headlines, and it begins with those poor Detroit Lions, and the injuries continue to stack up on this team, to say the very least, Justin. Within the last couple of weeks, especially like after the Bills loss, which what a high-scoring affair that game was between the Bills and the Lions, a potential legitimate Super Bowl caliber matchup, and realistically a Super Bowl preview, considering where both of those teams are in the standings at the moment. The Lions did, like, walking out with a loss is one thing, but walking out with the loss of players is another thing. In that game specifically, they lose Carlton Davis to a broken jaw. That's rough. And McNeill, their defensive tackle, who they signed, I believe it was before this past season, they signed him to a nice contract extension, tore his ACL. So those guys are most definitely out for the long term. McNeill will go into next season on the IR, probably, I would guess. I mean, ACLs are a lot more different now compared to what they were even like a decade plus ago. But we probably imagine for safekeeping, he might miss the first 3-4 games of the next season. Could be on like is it the PUP list that the guys get on from injuries from previous years? I think that's what it is. So could probably miss the first month or so of next season, be back in the fold for 12, 13 games next year. Carlton Davis, that's just a rough one, to say the very least. And I believe he's a free agent, if I'm not mistaken, is what I was reading. So rough time for him, who he was having a pretty good season for himself. And now he is injured. I haven't seen any reports that are trying to be optimistic, like Montgomery, who we'll get here in a moment, but he's probably gone for the rest of this campaign. If the Lions make a deep enough postseason run, maybe that he's able to force his way into maybe the NFC title game if they get back there, maybe even the Superb Owl if they play that as well. But Justin, before we get to the big name on offense who's also injured, which, you know, almost feels like a take your pick to an extent, but it is specifically Montgomery, who we'll get to. Like, the injuries have especially affected the Lions defense this season. We talked about the Lions the last couple of years are their defense. There's individually talented players, yes, but they really play extremely together as a whole unit. And throughout the season, we have several guys, their linebacking core. Now you have a secondary and an interior defensive lineman get hurt. They've been able to still win games even with these injuries. But now we see in that Bills game that just happened, they're facing the Vikings again here coming up in short order. How much are these injuries, do you think, going to impact a Detroit team that, how unlucky it is for them, the fact that they're 12-2, but they're nowhere near locking up the division just because of how good the Vikings were to start the year as well? And how much
even the Packers are still alive in that division technically.
Yeah. So, like, how much do you think these injuries are going to impact and maybe cost the Lions the conference home field advantage that we were talking about, 2-3 weeks ago, and maybe even the divisional crown?
Look, I mean, at this point, you have to sit there and you have to weigh what's more important. Do you want your team to stay healthy, or do you want that division crown and the number one seed? Because they still have the inside track to get that number one seed and home field advantage throughout the playoffs and the first round bye, which could be beneficial for an injury-ridden team. But you got a tough schedule coming up. It's not like you're just going to play like a couple of bad teams and walk your way in. You have to play the Vikings again. You know, this is a very interesting dilemma that you have, because, I mean, there's something to be said about the rhythm that you're in when you take the week off. You don't come back the same. There's always teams that have slow starts coming off a bye, but then there's also the fact that, are you willing to run your team into the ground to get something that isn't necessarily a championship? It's a tough call for them, and honestly, it's going to be interesting to see. I mean, I can't imagine Dan Campbell at any point letting his foot off the gas, but it's going to be interesting to see what direction they go.
To say the very least. And you mentioned Dan Campbell there. This is almost like a philosophy thing that needs to come up, right? A coaching philosophy thing, because you're right. Dan Campbell is a guy who, we know him hard-nosed player first. His reputation is that around the league. And definitely known as a guy, as we've seen even multiple times this year, with fourth down calls, with the call to just bury the Cowboys when they faced them earlier this season. Like, this is a guy who doesn't, let his foot off the gas, doesn't let his foot off the throat for the most part when you think about it. Like, this is a guy who believes in you got to go after, you got to go in for the finishing blow, right? And this is going to be a guy who needs to, like you just said, it has to ask the question, like, what are you willing to sacrifice here? Because this is going to be interesting. Let's move over to the offense now with David Montgomery. A couple weeks ago, I think it was the week before the Bills game, unless I could be wrong. I don't remember if he played the Bills game off the top of my head, but a torn MCL is what we saw in the recent news for David Montgomery. Torn MCL, tough injury to say the very least. He was initially projected to be out for the remainder of the season and the postseason. Then it turns out, in recent days and getting second and third opinions, that there could be a chance that Montgomery can return. I don't know if I remember seeing the last week of the regular season. Probably not that. Realistically, it would be the postseason once again, if the Lions get into the postseason, which they will for the most part, and if they could go on a deep run. So, Justin, what do you make of Montgomery? The turnabout, the change in what his status is, and bringing it back to what you mentioned about taking risks for the long term, because Montgomery is not like, he's not leaving the team after this season. The idea is still for him and Gibbs to be this 1-2 punch, thunder and lightning, I believe is what they call themselves going forward. Like
Sonic and Knuckles.
Yes, as well. Like those two. What do you think of the change in his outlook in terms of from totally missing everything to maybe he could come back, and the decision that now has to weigh on Detroit here, as we know they're going to make the postseason. Now it's just a matter of what are they going to do in a postseason.
Yeah, they already clinched. It's a tough situation. I mean, that's a major part of your offense. I mean, I know we want to call it a 1-2 punch, and Gibbs has been good, especially in the absence of Montgomery, but Montgomery's your guy. I mean, he is the bruising back that Lions offense hums after, and they go basically as far as he could take them. Goff has been excellent as a supplemental piece, as is Gibbs. And I know it's weird to call a quarterback a supplemental piece, but especially with how well he's played. But in my mind, that offense goes the way Montgomery goes. They win games that he plays well in. So it's going to be difficult because now they're going to have to change the way that they control the pace of the game. Gibbs is good around the goal line, but I've got to believe Montgomery's really been their goal line back, and Gibbs has been more of the supplemental back, the skill make a guy miss back. Not that he can't be a power guy, but it's just not the way that they've used him, and it's not something we've seen from him yet. You're gonna have to look for more players to get involved. Maybe we start to see some extra reps for a guy like Sam Laporta, who's having a disappointing season coming off a 10-touchdown rookie year.
Yeah, to say the very least. And just speaking out the backfield in itself, Justin, the third and fourth running backs on this team, Craig Reynolds, 28-year-old, year 6 player out of Cutsdown. So if that was your name, that player today, Justin, you better change it to say the very least. Yes, we got him, ladies and gentlemen.
I was too late. That's what happens. That's what you can't do in the middle.
Exactly. And Sion Vaki, the youngster out of Utah, I believe it's his rookie season, if I'm not mistaken. The two of them, very limited carries between the two. Actually, I can count it, 18 carries between them so far this season. It just goes to show how critical the two between Gibbs and Montgomery have been, to say the very least. So, and 23 rushing touchdowns between Gibbs and Montgomery as well. Like, that's all their rushing scores have been just those two guys this year. So, like you said, it's going to be very interesting. Gibbs, that change of pace guy. We've kind of been talking about Gibbs, and how talented he's been. He's got another 1,000-yard season for himself here. He has 11 touchdowns. Both numbers are probably going to be going up here in the next couple of weeks, which is great for Jahmyr Gibbs fantasy owners who shouldn't put him on the bench ever again for the rest of this postseason if you're still alive at this point. His role is going to end up going up here. Justin, with the injuries on all counts, and now look, this guy's had some great games this season, right? And I think the last couple of weeks as well, he's been throwing a lot of touchdowns. But we've also seen what can happen if maybe there's too much put on his shoulders. So I have to ask you, obviously we know it's a team game. I'm not just signaling out this guy because it's falls solely on him. But what do you make of Jared Goff now, Justin? And you mentioned Laporta there. We could also mention Amon-Ra St. Brown, who, yes, he's still the number one receiver on this team, over 1,000 yards, 10 touchdowns. He's having a great season for all intents and purposes. What do you make of it for a Jared Goff who has gotten the contract in Detroit? He went from when we first started this podcast, we were talking about, is Jared Goff just the guy for the next guy in Detroit? Jared Goff has become the guy, the quarterback that Detroit is going to go with. What do you make of, what's the word I'm looking for here? I don't know if worry is the right word, Justin, but do you think we might see some hero ball out of Jared Goff here in these next couple of games for Detroit? Or do you think it's going to be a situation where they're able to, at least offensively, get a handle on things, and it's still not going to necessarily have to be Jared Goff having to throw them into a victory, kind of like what had to happen in that Bills game that ultimately they fell short in? Again, not blaming him for that game, but just saying like the general thesis.
No, I mean, it's a good question because we have to go back to, is this the Jared Goff that's been to two NFC title games, has played in a Super Bowl? Or is this the Jared Goff that was, trade bait, someone to get the guy in so that you can use it, so that you can win the Super Bowl? It's going to be a tough question, and we have to see how he reacts. But I think it's important for him to stick to his game. I mean, not that much has to change for this team to be successful. He's got to stay in his zone. He's got to stay on his level, and not try and force things to try and win games. If they could stay with the same game plan, limit the turnovers, stay in control, manage the game, and let your skill position players and defense do what needs to be done, they should still win some games here. I mean, as devastating as all these injuries are, they're still 12-2 right now. I mean, they are 12-3?
12-2.
12-2. They are that good of a football team, and they're a deep football team. They've drafted, played well, and I'm not hitting I'm definitely not comfortable, but I'm not hitting the panic button yet either. I mean, we have to see a game under the belt without these guys now. I mean, again, it's not ideal. This is not what you're looking for as a team that had legitimate Super Bowl contention, but it's not completely out. We've seen crazier things than a team that's this good go on to win a Super Bowl after some injuries. So as long as he stays within himself and they don't try and force, I think, a lot of the responsibility on him, I think that they should still be all right. They should still have a legitimate chance to lock up that 1 seed. I mean, really, all they have to do is win out.
Yeah.
And they play this week.
I was just about to give you that right now. So the Lions will take on the Bears this Sunday.
Mhm.
They take on the Niners next week for Monday Night Football. So New Year's Eve matchup right there. And then, of course, Week 18, this is what I was kind of alluding to, the last matchup of the season, Lions-Vikings in Detroit. As of now, it's a flex game, of course, because we know how it works in the last week of the season. They'll decide it then. I would imagine, especially if the NFC North could still be up for grabs there, that it's probably going to end up being one of the later games on Sunday, to say the very least. And then the Vikings, Justin, because I know you were probably going to get into this as well. The Vikings are in Seattle this week to take on the Seahawks. They face Green Bay in Minnesota next week, and then they finish the Lions. So on paper, it's the toughest 2 games before that final matchup is the Vikings, because they're facing a 10-win team in the Packers and an 8-win team, division leader in the Seahawks. The Lions are taking on the Bears, and they're taking on a San Francisco team. Yes, in San Francisco, but this is not the same 49ers team that we were projecting right at the start of the season. So it's very go both ways. Like there is a chance for what we're saying. There's a chance, Justin, that if the Vikings can slip up here one of these 2 weeks, and they can, right? The Lions could have the division clinched by the last week.
Definitely.
So, and then I think if you're Detroit, the mindset you were talking about before, do you maybe go, I think this is probably what's going to happen. You go all out in the next 2 weeks, because if you win these next 2 games, you get up to 14 wins. That's 2 extra NFC wins for you, one of them being a divisional game. If the Vikings lose either, I don't think it doesn't have to be the Green Bay game. I think if the Vikings don't go 2-0 in the next 2, I think the Lions will get the division and the NFC, because, well, not the NFC, the Eagles are still there, but the division, because right now the Lions are 8-1 in conference. They're 4-0 in division. The Vikings are 3-1 in the division and 7-2 in the conference. If the Lions win the next 2, they got 10 conference wins and 5 division wins. If the Lions do that. If the Vikings split either way, they're going to be falling a bit short. So very real possibility the Lions can wrap everything up here. So I think the Lions, it behooves them to go full pedal to the metal. And the Vikings are also going to have to be on top of their game here too. I could have messed up the clinching scenario there, but that's what, on initial reading, I think that's what the case is. Here come the comments to say I'm wrong. So there's that.
No, what I'm looking at right now is what I find very interesting is the outside shot that the Green Bay Packers still have in all of this. I mean, they have an outside shot at the number 1 seed. I don't know the tiebreaker scenarios, but like, let's say Detroit and Philly and Minnesota lose out and Green Bay wins out, and they're all, 13 and
if those 3 teams
lose out
they'll be
and Green Bay wins
12-5.
out, they'll be 13-4.
Yeah,
and they'll have the number 1 seed. So,
which is insane to say the very least.
Yeah, I mean, there's just so many different scenarios right now that are very, very interesting. You kind of just want Detroit, Philly, and Minnesota just to lose this week and Green Bay to win, just to make it interesting. And then all of a sudden they're all within 1 game of each other. And it's a wild scenario.
Indeed. So.
But these teams just got to take care of business. I mean, the Pack can clinch a playoff spot winning this week. Philly, it's always good when you have 12-4 teams or 12-2 teams and double-digit win teams with 3 games to go that still need to play for something.
Yeah,
that just creates good football.
Yeah, 100%. And the Eagles have all the motivation in the world because the division is on the line this week. They could just wrap it all up against the Commanders. And the Commanders have still been playing Philly well the last couple of years, right? So this is nowhere near that Philly and Washington game.
And the Commanders are a much better team than they were. I
Yep.
mean, forget about, they play them close. This is a good football team now. So, it's definitely not a sure thing. It's the least sure thing it's been in a long time.
Yeah, and this is a Commanders team that 2 weeks ago more than 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, excuse me, they dominated the Titans. And then last week they won that, that kind of chippy game you need to win at the end against the Saints. So they've won in two different ways since that little midseason skid that they had to deal with. Big for the Commanders, both technically staying mathematically in it for the division, but also just the conference as a whole. We won't really talk too much about that this week. I think next week will really be the conversation for us because we'll see at least one division clinched in the NFC. Well, a chance at one division clinched in the NFC next week. The AFC, we already have three divisions clinched, excuse me. So it's just that one final division that we're waiting on, plus a bunch of wildcard spots. Everyone's still got so much to play for. And that's the best part, like you said, Justin. That's all you could ask for at this point. Let's talk about something that someone has to play for, to say the very least, coming up here. Brock Purdy. So this Niners season has not gone anywhere near what any of us would have thought. I'm waiting for the one person out there for us to find them who said the Niners were going to miss the postseason this year, to say the very least, because that is what they seem to be on the verge of doing. Mathematically, could still win the division. It would be very tough to do that. But they still could, in theory, win the NFC West and make the postseason. Now, the likelihood that's not the case here, Justin. The recent news over the last week and change is the idea of Brock Purdy. Brock Purdy, of course, Mr. Irrelevant, came in 2 seasons ago during 2022. Efficient, NFC Championship game appearance, lose. Last year, full season as a starter, 31 touchdowns, over 4,000 passing yards, make it to the Super Bowl, couple plays away from winning one, right? Now this year, a regression to the mean, going to finish with less passing touchdowns on paper unless he gets like 5 a game over the last 3 games. Yardage might be a bit tight. Completion percentage is down for him. But it's not just him. Of course, we know the Niners as a whole. Deebo Samuel just is probably playing his last couple of games as a 49er here, right? I don't see a long-term future for him, to say the very least. Brandon Ayuk, it was a disappointing season before the injury. Then he gets hurt, caught 0 touchdowns when he was playing this year. Christian McCaffrey has missed so much time. He's going to be called into question, what is his future in San Francisco? And even just this running back room is at its last legs, literally and figuratively here, because Mason's out. The backup they had to Mason is also out. They have Taylor Jr.
Isaac Guerrero.
Yes, he's out. I guess Patrick Taylor Jr. is going to get some playing time here in short order. This team is the definite. We talked about the Lions just now with the injuries. This team might be the real walking wounded in the NFL right now, because it's all over. Trent Williams has had to miss time this year, not necessarily due to injury, because of unfortunate personal matters, which is very tough to see for him and his family. This is a team that they had a player quit on them. That's not an exaggeration. They literally had a guy quit on this team within the last 2 games. And it's rough all around for this Niners team, Justin. And now the conversation gets brought up, right? The future of Brock Purdy, what his contract is going to be, because you look at contracts around the league, Justin, I believe I was looking at it earlier. There's about 8 or 9 quarterbacks who have signed for $50 million plus a year in terms of annual average payout and cap hit over the last couple of years. We know the names Lamar, Wright, Burrow, Tua, but it's also been Trevor Lawrence, it's been Dak Prescott, guys like that. Now it's the discussion of, will Brock Purdy join that list? Can the Niners afford it if they make him part of that list? I'll throw it to you first, Justin. What do you make of the fact that, it's not surprising, the Niners are bad. What do we have to talk about them? It's not surprising that the idea of the contract has been brought up with Brock Purdy, because it doesn't need to be. He was literally the last pick of the draft, right? So there is 0 fifth-year option for them to work on. It's straight up, this is his last year on this rookie deal. And he's going to get paid by someone. We know that. And will it be the San Francisco 49ers? So, Justin, what do you make of the alleged reports of Brock Purdy, what the contract demands could project to be, what he might get? Parse it out and give us your thoughts.
We're really going to find out what the 49ers think of Brock Purdy here, because it looks like they might be on the verge of a roster reset. And I don't necessarily know if the GM is going to go or the coach is going to go, because this is a very disappointing season. And it looks like their Super Bowl window has closed with the current this current version of this roster. So we're going to find out, do they really think that Brock Purdy is the guy, or is Brock Purdy the guy for right now? And I don't necessarily know if you pay a guy if you don't believe that he is your long-term future. And he's the guy. Look, we've seen guys with better skill sets than Brock Purdy. Let's face it. I mean, Brock Purdy's a good quarterback. He's a very intelligent guy. He understands the system, but I don't necessarily know if Brock Purdy on a different team, without the weapons he has, without the excellent coaching that he has, is the same guy. We're not talking about the same guy. So there is a lot of question marks on this roster that I think need to be addressed before you address Brock Purdy. What are you doing at the running back position? What are you doing for in terms of your offensive line, who's been good, but you're paying Trent Williams a lot of money? What are you doing in terms of that defense that's been injured and disappointing this year? What are you doing about your receivers, who you've paid now a lot of money and are not producing the way you expect guys that are being paid that kind of money to produce? So I think that if you don't have answers to all these problems, I don't know if you're paying Brock Purdy. You know, like, at what point do you turn around and say, this money is better spent somewhere else? We're going to reset at quarterback. We feel that with Shanahan there, we can get the right guy in. And there's not going to be a huge market for a guy like Brock Purdy. I mean, there's a very good chance he gets overpaid and gets to play somewhere else, but I don't necessarily know that what we're seeing is Brock Purdy being that good, or the system and situation around him makes him that good. We know he's a team player. Look, I have him on my dynasty team. I love Brock Purdy. I don't want him to go anywhere.
Right.
But from a football standpoint, I can't sit here and tell you he's the answer long term. I mean, it used to be, are they a quarterback away? And that's no longer the case. And if you're not a quarterback away, then having a question mark at quarterback is going to be that much more magnified.
Yeah. Yeah. The worst problem in the league is to have a quarterback, but not have the faith that he really is the guy for that team. And it seems to be the case that Brock Purdy is going to might have to be dealing with, to an extent, of what Jimmy G was dealing with. Where with Jimmy G, I think it was 100% more of a talent perspective. Whereas with Brock, maybe part of it is talent, but part of it is, what is the contract and the money going to be like? Just for context, because you bring up the hierarchy there for San Fran, John Lynch was named the general manager there back in 2017, right? He's a former player. He played for the Buccaneers and the Broncos. Had a cup of coffee on the practice squad, apparently, in the offseason with the Patriots, but ultimately never played with them, it seems. And became, like I said, Niners GM from 2017. Then in 2023, he got a bump up, not just general manager, but became the president of football operations. And Kyle Shanahan was signed as the head coach for San Fran in 2017. So this has exclusively been John Lynch's guy from day one. It has been these two in San Francisco running the show. And you look at what that tenure has brought to them so far after 2 tough seasons at first. Prior to this year, 4 out of 5 seasons, they have double-digit wins. All of those 4 out of 5 seasons, they've made it to the NFC title game all 4 times. 2 of them made it to the Super Bowl. The other 2 years, they lose to the Super Bowl champion Rams and the very, very close to being Super Bowl champions, but ultimately not Philadelphia Eagles. And the one season in between that stretch of success was the 2020 campaign, where they went 6-10 after dealing with after dealing with injuries on the defense, after dealing with injuries in the skill position group, after having a quarter. Wait a minute. We've seen this before. So this is nothing new to John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan. And that's why I forget. I don't remember if it was last week or 2 weeks ago or whatever it was. But to me, if you're San Francisco, like ownership, because ownership is really the only group that could get rid of either of these guys at this point, right? Because Lynch, it feels too tied to Shanahan. I don't think he's going to give up on his guy. the only way would be if ownership gets rid of these two. And I don't see with you and what you just listed, Justin, everything you talked about is 100% on the money. I'm not disreputing. I don't know what the word is. I'm not disagreeing. Let's say I'll keep it simple. I'm not disagreeing with anything you said because everything you brought up in terms of questions they need to answer is 100% on the money. Who else would you trust at this point for the team to make these decisions? You kind of have to just let Lynch and Shanahan figure everything out here. You got to let Lynch figure things out with this roster. You got to let Shanahan figure things out in terms of like the play style and what it is going to be going forward. And that kind of goes hand in hand with what Lynch is going to do. I mean, I'm not saying this is a fact in any way, but in terms of what Kyle Shanahan can do with guys, right? He's gotten random. Jordan Mason has almost 800 yards this season because of the Kyle Shanahan family blocking, right? Like Kyle Shanahan is probably in every single meeting with John Lynch, just to know what he's going to do so he can figure out what he has to do for his own job, right? Like these two are so tied together to where one can't exist without the other right now, literally and kind of figuratively, or maybe vice versa. Like it's going to be a case where with everything you mentioned, right? Trent Williams is a fair point. Like is he going to be able to emotionally deal with another season or two of football, right? Like still at the top of his game when he plays. But this has been an emotional turmoil year for him. Nobody would blame him if he chose to step away from football at this moment, right? Because he's had a successful Hall of Fame caliber career. It would ultimately be like going down of, you wish he could have gotten the Super Bowl for his resume. But he's a fantastic player. But he's just gone through a lot this season in his personal life, right? You have the situation where Christian McCaffrey and what his long-term future is, not just in San Fran, but even the NFL. With his injury issues this year, is he going to be able to come back from the lower body injuries he's had? Because I don't know if people know this, you kind of need your legs if you're a running back, or just in general in football. You need your legs, and having multiple leg issues this year is not ideal. The Ayuk thing has not looked well. What can you do to revitalize him next season? Deebo Samuel, like everything you mentioned is 100% a good point.
And you also have to look at the cap situation. Like,
yeah,
what can they do?
Social contract. No, it's going to be one of those things, and we're going to talk about another player here who money coming off the books and da-da-da. Like, I would imagine, this is my guess, if Christian McCaffrey is going to be a Niner to start the 2025 season, my guess is that he gets money moved around. Ayuk, it could be a thing where salary turns into like bonus. Deebo Samuel, I don't know his contract off the top of my head, but it feels like it's been a couple of years since Samuel had signed his deal. I think of all the guys, I think part of the reason why I'm saying he's 100% out of there is because I think he might be the easiest contract to get out of, whether it be they find a trade partner for him, which who's the sucker team that's going to agree to that, or they're going to end up cutting him. I think like to memory, he signed his deal quite a while ago. I think it was maybe the first season we were doing the show when he signed his deal. So he seems to be the most manageable of all these players. And as I pull up Spotrac here in the background, just to confirm what I'm saying, he does only have 1 year left on his legitimate deal. So he's the easiest contract by far in terms of like the big names there. George Kittle, you can't take off. I think, was it Rick last week or 2 weeks ago, Justin, who said George Kittle is like the heart and soul of this team in terms of being an emotional leader. He can't go at all. George Kittle is going to be there. He's probably another one of those guys. He would be willing to do right by the team, turn some salary into like bonus money. Of course, he would get the money, but he would just help the team out in terms of the salary cap. Like there are things they can do. Part of me is I don't know necessarily because they've now done it for so many years. I don't think the issue is can they make the money work? Because I think we've seen around the league that they can find a way. I think the issue is, are you going to get the right players in place to replace who you are likely getting rid of? Deebo Samuel is going to be gone, we believe. You need 1 or 2 wide receivers there to step up alongside both Ayuk and Jennings. I'm not counting out Jennings by any means of the imagination. I'm assuming he's still going to be – he's had a good year. But you need a couple more guys there, right? Who's the running backs going to be behind McCaffrey? If McCaffrey is going to be on this squad next season, what's the offensive line look like? Various things, to say the very least. So it's going to be very interesting on that end. But let's bring it back to Brock Purdy and my thoughts. I don't think he should get the contract extension. Look, I've made the joke, big clock Brock, right? Because it's Brock Purdy time and all that jazz. But I'm with you. And I've been a proponent for the entire time we've been doing the show that in a lot of situations, these skill position players are making some quarterbacks look really good, man. And Brock Purdy is the definition of that. I'm sorry to say, he was the last pick of the draft for a reason. He was a 7th round pick for a reason. So it's
he's proven to be better than where he was picked. That's not the issue. It's not about where he was picked. It's about, is it worth paying a guy that you're not 100% sure is the next top quarterback in a situation that you're in now?
You can't Daniel Jones yourself.
Exactly.
You just can't do it. And if that ends up to you having to work the late round magic again and finding a different guy, or if it's going to be them looking at this upcoming free agent market and the names that are going to be available, and do you bring someone in to almost compete with Purdy next year? Like it's going to be because you can't necessarily just fall back to the 2026 offseason in the first months of 2026 and find your answer. If you're John Lynch and co, you need to do the scouting ahead right now to figure out what the answer to quarterback is going to be if it's not Brock Purdy. And we assume it's not going to be Brock Purdy. I'm not giving him the contract because I just don't see a scenario where, like, he is a good player. He's a fine player. We have praised him on the show before, but at the end of the day, like what do we always say? Ceiling and floor, high floor quarterback, glimpses of a decent ceiling, but he's not one of the elite in the NFL. I think we can very confidently say that. He does things good. He does things well. He's a fine player. He's not a consistent week in, week out, win my team games. He's not a consistent top 10 quarterback in the NFL. He'll be top 10 for 4 weeks. He'll be top 10 for half a season. But a year after year after year stretch, right? And I know some people might be thinking, am I going to go to the given names, right? You're talking about Mahomes, you're talking about Prime Aaron Rodgers, Peyton, etc., right? Like that'd be the easiest thing to do. But Herbert, Hurts, Burrow, Lamar, that's consistency. And all 4 of those guys I just named, maybe not Hurts, maybe Hurts is just shy of the mark. No, I think he is though. $50 million. Brock Purdy is not in that tier. And if, I'll say this, if the 49ers do give him that deal, if they haven't surrounded him with the talent again, it's not going to go well. It could be another Daniel Jones-esque situation where you overpay the quarterback. And he's better than Daniel Jones. It's not necessarily a high bar. But he's a bit just throwing with Daniel Jones, because Daniel Jones, you could probably say, is a better runner than Brock Purdy. But you're talking about throwing a football. There's obviously been a lot that the Niners like there. So we don't need to come up with other scenarios. We can maybe wait till the offseason to talk about what quarterbacks San Fran could look at. There's already a couple names that have popped into my mind of who San Francisco could look at going forward. But I think for all intents and purposes, it's I would be shocked. I'm saying this, me personally. I would be shocked if Brock Purdy is the Niners starting quarterback in 2026. Not 2025, but 2026, to say the very least. So there's that. Because the franchise tag will be expensive as hell too, as well. Like that doesn't feel like it's worth it. Like they're gonna make the decision now if he's either gonna get the long-term deal or if he's gonna be shipped out of town. So there's that. All right. Any other notes for you, Justin, on Brock before we move on?
No.
All right. We talked about a guy who's struggling a little bit this year. Talk about another guy who's been struggling so far in his coaching career, Mike McDaniel. Now, he's made a postseason. He's made 2, I believe, actually. But Mike McDaniel, as the lower ticker shows and as the Podfather brought to our attention, Justin, it's not too good against teams that are above 500. 3-15 record against teams that are above 500. That is a shocking number. I was shocked when I saw that was a thing. And then for me personally, I then looked at his coaching record as a whole to what his time with the Dolphins has been so far. And pulling it up here, his head coaching career so far, 9-8 his first year, right? 11-6 last year, 6-8 currently, 26-2 regular season record for McDaniel, 0-2 in the postseason. So just let's clump that together just to make it easy for us, right? 26-24 over 50 games as a coach between regular season and postseason. 15 losses to teams above 500. I'm assuming 2 of those losses have been in the postseason as well. That's not great.
No,
that's not great.
A great number. I'm curious to know. I don't know if we can look it up. How many of those games Tua played in?
Mm.
Because I think that's a major thing. I like McDaniels as a head coach. I think he's a good head coach. I think that they've had some issues with injuries, unfortunately for them. The defense has been very, very banged up his entire tenure. Um, you lose a guy like Jalen Phillips every year, and it's tough. But it's certainly an issue. It's certainly something that you need to address because if you want to be a contender, you have to play against contenders. You have to prove yourself, and it's just something that they really haven't done in his tenure. And again, I think that part of the issue is probably Tua not being on the field, but some of it is, hey, are you winning in December? I mean, cold weather games are a serious question mark for this team. And you want to sit here and say, oh, the weather has nothing to do with it, but the stats differ. The stats beg to differ. The numbers beg to differ. So is this a coaching thing? Is it a personnel thing? There's a lot of reasons why they might be in the situation that they're in now. Is it a question of do the Dolphins reset at some point coming soon? Because it was a very small window of their team being really good. And unfortunately for them, it doesn't seem like it's moving in the right direction. I mean, they're not the Jets, but it's a very disappointing year for a Miami team that we thought was going to be better.
100%. 100%. And once again, like you mentioned, the Tua injury derailed this team for a lot of early in the season. Just goes to show that backup quarterback is very much a premium in this league.
I think if you look at it, they were one of the last teams to score a touchdown this year. Like they didn't score an offensive touchdown for like 4 weeks.
Yeah. There was that, and there was also a stretch of time where they didn't lead a game at all for probably around that same stretch of time, which is like in this league, respectfully, it's not that hard to get a random lead. Like it's not. The Panthers will randomly lead games here from time to time. Like it's not that difficult to lead some football games, but the Jaguars made it look difficult.
I mean, this is you could look at shades of the Bengals here. I mean, they started 6-2, man. They started 6-2 before they had a 3-game winning streak. They lost to the Packers and then they beat the Jets, and then all of a sudden they were 6-7 and lost to the Texans last week, which made them 6-8. It's not like they have an easy schedule. They play some tough defenses in the 49ers, the Browns, and then the Jets.
Yep.
But
2 of those away games, by the way.
They might be meaningless games at that point.
Yeah.
They need help now.
Yeah, and it's going to take a lot. Because the Greer brothers, one of them is in the NHL, one's in the NFL. I think it's Chris Greer, right? Is the Dolphins GM? Yeah, because his brother, Mike Greer, is in the NHL. But Chris Greer, like it's going to have to be a lot of work in this offseason for this team because they did extend Tua, right? So they extended him. You look at that offensive line and what they've built the last couple of years. You look at the skill position group and Jalen Waddle. Like I talk about, we could look at Tua, we could look at McDaniel, of course, the 3-15, which is not great at all. Is Jalen Waddle disappointed you as much as he has me, Justin?
He's been out a lot.
But it just feels like even when he plays, like it's just a whole lot of nothing there.
You could say that about a lot of players on the offense this year. I mean, what happened to Mostert? He had 20 touchdowns last year. What happened to Achane? He's on the field now. Where is this running game that we've been hearing about for an entire year that dominated the NFL last year? Even Tyreek is not having a Tyreek Hill season.
Nowhere near it.
And I mean, don't get me wrong. There's been a lot of turmoil. I don't necessarily think it's 100% his fault, but when was the last time you heard, Tyreek just had another 50-yard touchdown? It's been weeks. We used to hear that every week.
I don't remember the exact tweet off the top of my head, but I think I saw something on Twitter just now. It's like Tyreek Hill hasn't had a 30-plus yard score or whatever since like week 3 or 4 this season. been months.
What's going on?
It's been months. This offense has fallen apart.
Yeah, Jonnu Smith is the hottest new tight end.
Indeed, indeed, to say the very least. Jonnu Smith, career resurgence. Picked him up on fantasy this week, by the way. Hoping he does me good as I try to survive in the postseason. But it's been rough. There's a lot of factors we can look at from the just underperformance of this team as a whole, but especially at Rick when Rick gets on. If Rick joins during this specific topic here in a couple moments, he'll love to talk about this. But Tua's record in the outdoor games in the snow when the weather gets extremely cold. Hill and Waddle have now disappeared this year. And even when you look at I was mentioning the losses before, the 2 postseason losses, Hill and Waddle have just not shown up in the 2 postseason losses either for this team. I think in both those games, those guys were each held like under 50 or 60 yards each time when you need to show up the most. So there's that. Like you mentioned, A-Chain and Mostert, it's kind of been like very weird. Like A-Chain has kind of taken the role as being the guy, but his rushing production isn't the same as last year. It's projected to finish way worse. You just have an extremely tough situation here if you are the Miami Dolphins. Because then you look at the defense. There's a defense that Chubb got hurt at the end of last year. Phillips has dealt with injuries. This team, the defense is fine. Like I don't necessarily want to. I don't want to necessarily put this on the defense because I feel like the defense for the most part has kind of just tried its best, but it's just this offense. This offense is under-delivered, right? Like I look at a head coach. When you have a head coach who, I've always said this. When you have a head coach whose specialty is like it's well known to be one side of the ball, and that when that side of the ball is underperforming, you got to look at that. And Mike McDaniel. I don't know if people remember this. Mike McDaniel, not necessarily a defensive guru for his time as an assistant. He is an offensive guy, right? He's the Shanahan coaching tree. He was Shanahan's kind of right-hand man, really, when he was in San Fran. And, he goes to Miami. He's got the attitude, and I don't mean bad attitude. Like, he's got the charisma. He wears the glasses. He's kind of like that dorky guy, but he's a player. He's very in tune with his guys. It's very interesting to see how all this is playing out in Miami. Like this, like you said, this is a team they've made the postseason the last 2 years, one and done's both times as a lower seed, and now this year they're very much in danger of missing the playoffs. Them and the Bengals got a little bit of help with the to an extent with the Chargers Broncos thing. Although it would have been way more helpful if the Broncos actually held on to beat the Chargers, because now you need one of those two pretty good teams to start to lose out here. By the way, of course, the AFC West is about to have 3 teams make the postseason freaking 2 years after we thought it was going to be the case. Thanks, AFC West. Thanks a lot. But it's very like slim pickings and not a lot of hope, to say the very least, for the Miami Dolphins. I didn't give the Bengals have more of a shot compared to them, really, to make a run at things here for all things to consider. So it's looking tough. It's looking tough to say, for all intents and purposes. And Mike McDaniel. Well, what do you? Let's go to the ultimate question here, Justin. Mike McDaniel and his long-term future in Miami. I don't think. I would be shocked if anything happened this offseason with Mike McDaniel's job. I don't see a scenario where he's not the Dolphins head coach in 2025.
Yeah, neither do I. I don't think he's going anywhere this year. I think that.
Do you think the conversation changes next year if they're off to a bad start?
Yeah, for sure. We'll have to see exactly what happens in the offseason also. But I don't think that a lot of people are turning here and saying this is a coaching issue. I think a lot of people are concerned about the personnel on the field. Like I said, just due to injury concern. I mean, cold weather games aside, this team is always missing key guys. And you're paying certain guys a lot of money to not be on the field. So, I mean, maybe it's a training staff issue. I don't know. But, I mean, you got to have Tua on the field more. I mean, at some point, you're going to have to turn around and say, look, this is not – if you can't stay on the field, you're not a member of this team. As harsh as it is, I mean, the reality is you got to win in this league. And you got to look at some of your guys on defense and say, all right, here's the issues and how are we going to keep our top guys on the field and how are we going to start performing? because I don't think their defense is bad. I just think that there's a lot of guys that aren't on the field in key moments.
Right.
So it's tough to say what's going to happen. I mean, I would definitely be surprised, but it wouldn't be a total shock if they made some drastic moves in the offseason. But I don't think it's going to happen.
Yeah, it'll be. You kind of just need to hope this team gets healthy because Bradley Chubb, who I mentioned before, hasn't played the entire season. Like that was a guy that you banked on. You gave long.
They gave up a first-round pick for that guy.
Yeah, gave up a first-round pick, paid him very handsomely, and they played him late last season.
He's not been the same.
No, well, he hasn't played at all in 2024 because
I mean, even when he was on the field last year, he was not the same.
Yeah, it's like he had 11 sacks last year actually. Like he was doing good, but they put him out there. I forget what game it was. He just tears up his freaking knee, and I think I don't remember the team, but I think the situation was the game was done. Like Bradley Chubb
shouldn't have been on the field.
Out there field. Yeah, shouldn't have never been on the field. Jalen Phillips too this year. Like last year, he gets hurt.
Back-to-back season enders.
Also with his knee, and just one sack this year. Barely seen the field. Like this team, like there's talent on that defense. That's why I'm saying, like, to me, the offense is the focus more so just in terms of play. I think the defense, if this defense was
the issue also, I mean, look, that Waddle.
Yeah.
Waddle's out this week.
Yeah, he's got only 2 touchdowns this season.
He's not on the field.
Yeah.
Tua's not on the field. Their quarterback's not on the field. Think about how bad that offense was. They went out and they signed Snoop Huntley because Skylar Thompson wasn't the guy.
Yeah. Yeah.
It feels like a lifetime ago, but that was this year.
Yeah, we were talking about the 49ers and them needing to maybe get a quarterback in there. The Dolphins need a backup quarterback.
Well, especially if you're a quarterback like Tua. But
yeah.
He's great when he's on the field.
Problem is he needs to be on the field. I don't know. Maybe the Dolphins will surprise us. Maybe the Dolphins will fire McDaniel. They'll trade up for the first overall pick. They'll draft Shador, and then they'll hire Dion. Maybe the Dolphins will be the team that does that. I'm going to make that joke every single week, just so everyone knows, by the way. I'm going to find a way to make that joke every single week.
With every single team.
Not every single team. It's kind of
every team.
I mean, yeah, for joke.
I need you to find a conceivable way for the Chiefs to fire.
Oh, I have that. No. Give me that. No. Justin, let me run with that right now, buddy. Here's what's going to happen. The Chiefs are going to three-peat this year. Andy Reid retires. Patrick Mahomes retires. Travis Kelce goes on tour with Taylor Swift. And they're going to trade up for Shador Sanders. They're going to give up 7 first-round picks for Shador.
They trade the return rights of Patrick Mahomes.
Yes, exactly. They'll trade 3 firsts and the return rights of Patrick Mahomes, who under the table has agreed he will never come back to football. And they're going to draft Shador. They're going to sign Dion. And boom, it's the Sanders show in Kansas City. That is the easiest scenario, actually. Come on. Make it challenging. Anyways, see, here's the thing. I can't do 32 teams because there's no way in hell that Dion and Shador Sanders will work for the Carolina Panthers. There's no way they would do that.
Oh, but that doesn't mean that they don't have a scenario in which it gets figured out. These billionaires, Dion's not dumb. They offer enough money. Dion's going there.
That's true, but you got to trust the owner. Cannot trust that owner at all. Actually, wait, no, I have it. You want to know who the general manager of the Carolina Panthers would be if Dion agreed to go there?
Who?
Deion Sanders.
Yeah.
Deion Sanders trades 35 total draft picks to get the first and second overall pick so that he can have Shador and Travis Hunter. Am I wrong?
No, that's it. What's happening?
We're about having fun here. We're about having fun. But speaking of which, I was talking about having fun. I'm going to have fun reliving this story. I know one person won't, but maybe a second person if he does end up joining us here in a couple of moments. But as we continue to go through our holiday headlines here in the NFL, ladies and gentlemen, we go from Mike McDaniel, who we talked about the flaws of the Dolphins just now. You mentioned we mentioned the offense, just in the running back issues. Tyreek Hill. Can we? Shout out to Tyreek Hill for actually playing through a majority of these games. Like the dude's been going through. He's running out there just getting cardio at this point for this season. Jalen Waddle has not been effective. It's almost like, do you think, Justin, yes or no? I'm not saying like who specifically. Do you think a third receiver would help Waddle and Hill going forward? Alleviate that pressure off them?
I mean, you can't say no, but I don't think that's the
I,
issue.
I'm not saying it is the issue. I'm not saying you have to spend a lot, but just in general, yes or no, would a third wide receiver help out Hill and Waddle, alleviate that pressure, right?
I mean, of course it would. Having a better team is always better for your team.
100%. So when I think of getting a third receiver for your team, when you have like a Hill and a Waddle, or if you have a Wilson and Lazard, you need to be willing to get that third receiver.
Can we not compare Garrett Wilson and Allen Lazard to Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill?
Well, I mean, at the end of the day, you got to make a trade, Justin, and you can't spell Jets without E, you can't spell pain without A, and you can't spell trade without EA Sports. It's in the game. Because apparently that's what Jets ownership uses to decide if trade should go through or not.
I was like, what's happening? Where are we going with this?
Look, I never said that all of my lead-ins were straightforward. I'm just having fun with it.
I was confused.
Yeah, I achieved my goal. I didn't want you to realize where I was going. I wanted you to think I was going right, when in reality I was going zigzags, like I was trying to avoid a crocodile. Or is it an alligator that you have to allegedly avoid zigzags? Either way. Swamp puppies, ladies and gentlemen. Woody Johnson. The news came out earlier this week from Diana Rossini's report, who, amazing reporter, by the way. Wish she still worked for a certain company because she's actually really good at her job. Diana Rossini reported that there was a deal in place the week after we did our freaking memoriam. There's a deal in place. Was it before the season started, Justin? Was that the report? It was before the season started.
It was before they signed Mike Williams.
Oh, that makes it. Ooh. There was a report that the Jets had a deal in place with the Broncos at the time, because this player was still on the Broncos, with GM General George Patton, as I like calling him. The Jets were going to acquire Jerry Jeudy from the Denver Broncos prior to him ultimately being dumped to the Browns. And apparently, everything was in place. The deal was agreed to. The GMs, this is what good people do at their jobs. Everything was in place. There was going to be a deal. Most likely, I'm assuming, because Jerry Jeudy also needed a contract, which is what he got from the Browns. I'm sure that even the Jets had that already. I don't know if it was directly the same thing, but everything was in place for this trade. All that needed to happen was the final sign-off. Justin, you've dealt with this in work, right? You have everything ready. You just need, it's either your direct manager or maybe someone above them needs to sign off on something, right? It's the same with me. Whenever I'm doing stuff, I need to sign off to make sure something can go to air, that it looks good and everything. The Jets had it. They just needed the sign off. And Woody Johnson, a man who at one point served as an ambassador to the UK for this country, Merck. A man who months later would fire a head coach after coming back from London. Woody Johnson said no to this trade because apparently Jerry Jeudy had a terrible awareness rating in Madden, and he wasn't a highly rated enough player. Now, the report did say that his sons, apparently, which I thought it would have been grandsons. I thought Woody Johnson was old enough to have teenage grandkids, but I guess not. Woody Johnson's sons.
He is old enough to have teenage grandkids.
But the report said I saw that these were his sons, not grandsons.
Yeah, no, you're right. I'm just saying he's old enough to have teenage grandkids.
But when I saw this at first, I thought it was grandsons. I
think originally it was reported as grandson, but I think that it's not the case.
Yeah. So the teenage rebellion phase of family members of Woody Johnson told him that just straight up, Jerry Jeudy is not that guy. He's not that guy, pal, because of the fact that he's just not a good enough player in Madden. Doesn't have the superstar development, Justin. You have to put way too much EXP to get him, and Lord knows with the Madden regression system, if the Jets had traded for Jerry Jeudy, he would have been a bum by the 2026 season. That's what Woody Johnson's kids apparently told him. So he said, no, you're not making this trade. I would just like to point out, I wish I had actually brought it up, but I was too busy trying to make the joke work to lead us into this. But if I were to pull up the NFL stats real quick, looking at league leaders across the National Football League, Justin, let me give you a quick list for receiving yard leaders. Number 1, Jamar Chase at 1,413. God, that man is insane this season. Number 2, Justin Jefferson at 1,243. Number 3, CeeDee Lamb, 1,089. Never forget, I once said CeeDee Lamb would get 1,500 yards in the season. He almost did it last year. Probably not going to do it this year. Amon-Ra St. Brown, I mentioned it before. He's 4th in the league, over 1,000 yards. 5th in the league with 1,052 yards. 1,500 would be wild. No, 1,052 yards. 4 yards behind Amon-Ra St. Brown and 37 yards behind CeeDee Lamb. Jerry Jeudy.
Well, we could say this. Jerry Jeudy did not start out that way also, which is even more impressive when you think about it because he did this in so much less time. I think like 6 games into the year, he had like 300 yards because his quarterback was not good. But then they changed to Jameis Winston, and things have looked up for a guy like Jerry Jeudy. I mean, I could go into the turmoil and the rumors and the BS that we had with the Jets, but I don't really want to. I mean, I told you how I felt last week. Am I surprised? Not even a little bit. Not even a tiny eensy bit. They're a bad football team. They're going to be a bad football team for a long time. And good on Jerry Jeudy for finding a way to escape and be on a team like the Browns instead of the Jets because he's probably better off. Jerry, you're muted.
Dang it. He didn't have to do anything to escape. Like that was ownership that helped him out on that one.
Jerry, did you just hear the sentence that came out of my mouth?
Yes.
He's better off on the Browns.
No, I agree, but I'm just saying he didn't force his way away from the Jets. He didn't have to do anything. Oh man. So we might have our mystery third man here. It's the third man, as the WCW commentary for Hogan said. Podfather, are you there?
I don't want to be because I don't want to talk about Jerry Jeudy, but yes, I'm here.
How you doing? Obviously, this is another Podfather dashing through the snow is the Podfather right now, ladies and gentlemen. Rick, yeah, I had some fun when it came to the Jerry Jeudy thing. I don't have too much to say about just memeing on the Jets for following EA Sports Madden, which is, of the list of sports video games to follow ratings wise, is the worst. Like to pretend that EA Sports knows anything about making a football game at this juncture, knows anything about ratings balancing, it's a joke. I think that's more of a joke than anything. See, here's the thing. As someone who has won 15 to 20 career Lombardis and like 30 Stanley Cups in his EA Sports GM video game career, I'm not going to necessarily just completely disregard looking at sports ratings. But Madden, at least I can understand an NBA owner doing it. 2K.
Jerk. Let me step in here. I'm going to top you in a second here. As somebody who's won every wedge on the Wheel of Fortune Wii video game, I think I have a little more understanding of how things work in the video game world. Okay.
Attaboy.
Let me tell you this. It's the holiday season, so I don't really want to be that crass about this, but why are you listening to teenagers, dude? Like, teenagers are the worst people to get advice from. I'd rather get advice from my 1-year-old daughter than a teenager about how to do things. So, but then again, this is the Jets and this is Woody Johnson, figuring out that, this is so. And the other thing that I love too, and Justin, if I get the wrong guy here, just correct me. John Simpson, the guard, right? Didn't he also have a bad awareness rating? But they signed him anyways. He's playing pretty well.
Simpson depends on who you ask if he's playing well. But also, what makes you think that the Johnsons know anything about the offensive line and have addressed it at all? That's not a skill position player. That's not a glamour spot. They don't care about the offensive line.
Well, the Johnsons clearly don't know anything about anything, So, I mean, there's that, but it's just a classic case of overreach and not, as we like to say, jerk, not getting out of the way of the people who actually make the right responsibilities and the right decisions. So,
yep.
Typical.
I think it's funny, Rick, because we're both hockey fans, and I think of the Buffalo Sabres, who right now they're the main team in professional sports that can rival the Jets, right, in terms of the missed playoff streak over the last decade plus. I was talking about it because I was working with an editor who's a Buffalo Bills and Sabres fan, so it kind of goes both ways for him on the fandom, right? He's happy with one team and unhappy with the other. he told me that apparently Terry Pegula is more hands-on with the Sabres than the Bills, and that it's actually Kim Pegula, his wife, who is technically like kind of overseeing things with the Bills, and that Mrs. Pegula made the choice, I'm going to let the football men figure this out. And look what happened. So it's when you bring it to the Jets, this is an owner who he never lets. You got to say this with most New York owners. They just never let their people figure it out. They always, in some way, shape, or form, get involved and ruin it. And that is a simple way.
Well, I would say this. Up until this year, your one argument against that would be James Dolan with the Rangers for our hockey terminology, because up until this year, the Rangers were on their own and they were playing pretty well. Of course, now they're terrible, but that's different. That's not because of Dolan, it's because of Chris Drury. But
well, apparently, Rick, like part of the thing is like one of the people that Drury reports to is Dolan's kid. Like I think the Dolan family is starting to get a little bit more involved in the Rangers than we might think, and that's the worst possible thing to happen.
So here's the bottom line in all of this. Don't look at video game ratings to tell you what a human being is going to do on the field, how aware they are, what their speed is, what their strength is, because those are just numbers that are stupid, And also, when you create a player in those games, you can jack the numbers up however high you want them. So, let's not use, and you're right, Madden of all games.
Yeah.
I would rather use ratings from Tecmo Bowl than Madden at this point.
Yeah. NCAA. That's more of a line of demarcation at this point than anything.
Yep.
All right, well, the Podfather has joined us. It's another Podfather on the Road show, ladies and gentlemen, which is just in time because we've got a couple of topics here to discuss where we get to the much, much more. Rick, I'm going to just rapid fire real quick. Simple yes or no's for the first three topics we discussed here. Rick, the Lions injury stacking up on them. David Montgomery could be in and out, whatever. Do you think the injuries the Lions are dealing with now in these last three games, do you think it's going to cost them the NFC North? I think we may have lost the Podfather, to say the very least.
That was quick.
Yeah, right? So as we wait for the Podfather to get back here, and we'll just keep him on the screen just in case. Justin, while we wait for his questions, let's go to another quick one. Deontay Johnson's tenure as a Raven has ended. He had one catch. Now, they didn't have to give up a lot for him, but it was very going out with a whimper. I don't have any comments to say. Like, will a team probably sign him in the offseason to show up at a training camp? Probably. But I don't know.
Reports that they expect him to be claimed on Monday on waivers. They're not so removed from a talented season that they that I would expect him not to get picked up. I think there's a team that's probably in the playoff hunt that's probably going to turn around and say, all right, we could use some receiver help, but it's...
Do you think, like, maybe, I'm trying to think, the Chargers or the Broncos?
Yeah, I can see the Chargers. I can see the Broncos. Look, the Chiefs might need some help. There's teams that need some receiver help that are in the hunt that it might be worth it just to take a swing on a guy like this. But I'll tell you, this is damning. I mean, he was decent in Carolina, and you can maybe blame the situation. To go to a team like the Ravens that needed wide receiver help, contribute nothing, and then immediately get cut, speaks volumes about you as a player, as opposed to what it's, I can't imagine it's the system. There's plenty of guys that go to Baltimore and there's no issues. So, I mean, Mike Tomlin's a saint, obviously. Yeah. He seems to be able to manage even the most difficult personalities. So it's interesting to see what's going to happen with this kid and where he goes now. And is his career over?
Antonio Brown, Martavis Bryant, Chase Claypool, Deontay Johnson, George Pickens might be joining that list in a couple years' time.
Emmanuel Holmes, Plaxico Burress was there.
Yeah.
Tons of guys.
Well, to me,
Juju Smith-Schuster.
Yeah. To me, there's kind of like a line of demarcation you need to go with. Guys who were successful in the Steelers that left that were fine, guys that were successful in the Steelers that were left that were but at least they're not headaches, and guys that were successful in Pittsburgh that left and are just scum of the earth. Like, there's three lines there because, like, to me, Holmes and Burris, they were on the Steelers. They left the Steelers. Holmes was a good receiver on the Jets. Plaxico won a Super Bowl with the Giants.
But they were both
And then shot himself.
wild head cases. I mean, Plaxico was a decent guy. He had an issue with a gun, and it is what it is. But, like, Santonio Holmes, as much as I loved him on the Jets, he wasn't known as, like, a good guy. He was, like, a diva, and he had all the same issues that these guys have. You know, Le'Veon Bell, another guy that went to the Jets.
Yeah.
You know, you leave, and he had a little bit of success, but, you know.
Well, to me, like, Juju, to me, like, he was just, Juju was never a diva to me. He just liked TikTok way too much.
He's just diva in a different way.
He was a TikTok star.
He was a new wave kind of diva.
Yeah, like
where it wasn't about causing issues because you're full of yourself and you're a bad guy. It was about causing issues because you needed attention.
Look, for me, the last great Steelers wide receiver was Hines Ward. Wins the Super Bowl, then goes on to win Dancing with the Stars. What more do you want from the guy?
Is Emmanuel Sanders the only late-round Steelers wide receiver, aside from Hines Ward, who just hasn't lost his head in his career? Emmanuel Sanders was a good player.
Antoine Randall.
Yeah.
He didn't lose his head. He lost his original position. He was a quarterback, but, you know, that's different.
What about Mike Wallace?
Did
he lose his head?
He's kind of. I feel like he was a diva in Miami and Minnesota.
Could have been.
Yeah. I could be wrong. I liked Mike Wallace when he was a Steeler. They just completely fell out of it. All right, Rick, what we were trying to do here, because I don't have any more to say about Deontay Johnson.
Very quick. I'm sorry, by the way. I got a phone call that my Madden rating dropped about 5 points due to a lack of, I don't even know what they said. I think it was a lack of kicking power, which is just ridiculous.
That's fair. All right, very quick rapid fire here for you. First three topics that we had discussed on the show. First one, yes or no, will the Lions' injuries catch up to them, and will it cost them the NFC North?
Yes, it will.
All right. Brock Purdy and his contract, do you think he will get extended, or do you think the Niners will end up letting him go at some point within the next year and change?
They shouldn't, but they'll extend him.
Okay. And Mike McDaniel, as you pointed this out to us, 3-15 against above 500 teams in his career so far. Me and Justin did a lot of talk about the offense and the defense. Will Mike McDaniel be the head coach of the Dolphins for the 2026 season?
I don't think he'll be the head coach of the 2025 season, to be honest with you, but no.
Oh, well. Okay. All right. There it is. And you gave your thought about on the Jets. You gave your thought about Deontay Johnson and Steelers wide receivers in general. This is the last big headline. Boys, Michael Penix Jr. earlier this week will be starting for the Atlanta Falcons, it was reported, and Kirk Cousins is going to be benched. We thought that was just going to be the main crux of it. But it turns out the expectation now is that Kirk Cousins is going to be cut by the Atlanta Falcons for this. He'll be cut before his $10 million roster bonus is due on March 17th. He signed a $180 million contract 9 months ago in March. And he's technically going to make it past this season because he's probably going to be designated as a post-June 1st cut, we believe. But Kirk Cousins is going to be released, not even making it through the first season of this deal. To say the very least, that is something. Immediate reaction to when Penix was just announced as the starter, and now that it's announced that Cousins is expected to be cut.
Well, Atlanta still has a shot to win this division, right? I mean, I think they're maybe a game back of Tampa or something like that?
Yeah, they're a game back.
So it's a bit of a surprise. I mean, I guess in theory, if you want to try out a new hand, I suppose that's fine. It's a very weird timing for it, but I guess we'll see how he performs. You know, the thing coming out of college with him is that he has a cannon for an arm, Penix does. And so maybe that's something that, you know, the Falcons do have a lot of downfield weaponry. I mean, they still have Drake London, but you also saw this year the emergence of Darnell Mooney being a lethal threat for them. Not to mention they've got a good enough offensive running game to try behind Bijan and Algier. So Maybe it's just Kirk Cousins wasn't the guy, at the time. Maybe that was the problem, was that towards the end of the year when they wanted to kind of push forward, they didn't have the legs to do so. But releasing him is a big surprise to me, because it almost, to me, puts the Falcons back at square one. Because if Penix doesn't work out in these final 3 games, and it's a very small sample size, but if it doesn't work out in these final 3 games with them so close to the division lead, are you going to say run it back with him in 2025 if he can't get them the division? If he goes 3-0 and Atlanta wins and sneaks into the playoffs, that's a heck of a way to start your NFL career. But anything less than that, it's a huge gamble, and a surprising one by, admittedly, an ownership group that doesn't really take a lot of chances, I think. So, I don't know. It's a surprise to me. It's disappointing for Kirk Cousins, obviously, but I think there's a market for him next year as a top free agent target. And again, I know we talked about this a couple weeks ago. Maybe if you're the Giants and you don't want to take a quarterback number 1 because you don't like Cam Ward or Shedeur Sanders, Kirk Cousins 1-year stopgap, perhaps? I don't know. It's a possibility.
Very much so. Justin,
Signing Kirk Cousins would be the most Giants thing I've ever seen.
Well, no. How about Aaron Rodgers to Kirk Cousins? Would that be the most Jets thing ever? Because that might happen too.
Yeah, please don't. Please don't. Please don't do that.
Hold on. Aaron Rodgers needs to do 2 more steps to complete the Brett Favre arc. He needs to go to the Minnesota Vikings, and then he needs to allegedly, per court records, but still can be fully confirmed, defraud a state in the South. So, Aaron Rodgers to Minnesota next season, Kirk Cousins 1-year deal to the Jets while they draft a quarterback in the 4th round to develop.
I mean, Brett Favre didn't necessarily. Yes, he did that to save his city, but he also went to Southern Miss. So Aaron Rodgers needs to defraud all of California and then become the governor for some reason, somehow. That would be more the arc there, I think.
I don't know about governor, but the rest of it.
Hey, if Schwarzenegger could be governor, so could Rodgers.
That's true. All right. First off, shout out to Kirk Cousins, 2-0 against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers this season, and the performances he had to them: 8 touchdowns and 1 interception in 2 games against the Buccaneers, 1 touchdown and 9 interceptions in the last 4 or 5 games. So it's been rough, to say the very least, for old Kirko. Justin, as I throw it to you, you can talk about the decision, just the benching itself, but let's talking about the contract here. The tweets that I read to you pre-show, Justin, I want to bring this out for the viewers here. A standard post-June 1st release for Kirk Cousins would mean the Falcons will need to carry his $40 million cap hit into June, and after which they would take on dead cap hits of $40 million in 2025 and $25 million in 2026. For context, Michael Penix Jr. Cap hits 5.2, 6.2, and 7.2 in the next 3 seasons, respectively. So they'll be fine on quarterback, you would think, if he plays well. And then one more note on Kirk Cousins: the fully guaranteed $27.5 million salary owed by the Falcons for 2025 does contain offset language. An outright release by Atlanta makes it highly likely that his next team will only need to pay at or near a minimum of $1.255 million in base salary for the 2025 season. That was from Spotrac. Very helpful website in terms of all this contract stuff. We very much thank you, Spotrac, for all that you do for the sports world and for fans like us, because I very much am a transaction contract heavy person, especially when I play games and franchise modes and look at stuff like this.
Is that how you pronounce their name? Oh, okay. That's interesting.
Yeah, what did you think it was?
I thought it was Spotrac.
I'm not gonna lie, I thought it was Spotrac too, but then I heard podcasters call it Spotrac, and I'm like, oh, okay, I guess that's what it is. I guess it makes more sense. SPO track. I don't know. Anyways, Justin, the Penix starting now, and the Kirk Cousins, obviously what they're gonna have to do with his contract, and kind of like Rick is alluding to, where he could go next. I mean, we're talking about the Niners earlier. Kirk Cousins and Kyle Shanahan have a connection.
First of all, I think that would be excellent for Kirk Cousins and probably for the 49ers. But what I want to address right now is the Atlanta Falcons, because as a fan of that team, as a player of that team, how can you trust anything that's going on in that organization right now? This was one of the most grossly mismanaged situations that I've seen, I guess, in not that long, because now it seems to happen every single year where they hire a new head coach, they have a really good defense and team, then they feel like they're a quarterback away, and then they just grossly grossly mismanaged the quarterback situation. I mean, to come out here and to sign Kirk Cousins for all that money, which was clearly the wrong idea, and then draft the quarterback immediately saying, this is for the future, don't worry about it. And then give Kirk Cousins 12 games with this team in which they are not out of it, but they're not in a good position. They don't control their own destiny with 3 games left. But still be in the playoffs, in the playoff hunt, and hand it to a rookie that hasn't played yet this year, instead of addressing any other part of your team with all of that either money or draft capital, is just seemingly unheard of in my mind. And now they're going to be handcuffed to a dead cap that's going to probably be close to setting records and affect your salary cap space so that you can't make the moves just in case this kid all of a sudden is good for the next 4 years while he's still on his rookie contract. Is just, again, one of the most short-sighted, mismanaged situations I have ever seen. And let's not sit here and act like they don't have a really good young core on offense with Bijan Robinson, Ty Algier, Drake London,
Mooney,
Darnell Mooney, who's the veteran on that team at like, what, 28?
Yeah.
Yeah. Kyle Pitts.
Oh, he's probably not long for Atlanta, if we're being honest, but I do see your point.
But, like, can you blame him? Look at this situation that they just developed. And they have a good, decent young defense.
Yeah. Yeah.
They finally seem like they got the head coach right, although we don't know. It's only been less than a year. We'll see. But, like, oh, my God. To come in here and just shoot yourself in the foot before you could do anything is the most ridiculous jet-like thing I've ever seen another team do in the past 5 years.
It's almost like
hiring Urban Meyer as your head coach when you're drafting, when you have the number 1 overall pick.
Yeah, it's almost like a team that lost 28-3 lead in the Super Bowl is still making mistakes here. Do you want to hear something?
Not been the same team since.
They really have not. Do you want to hear something funny, Justin? Because I was searching. Because for the life of me, I could name a good amount of GMs in the league, or at least I'd come close. I could not think of who the Falcons GM was while we were discussing this, so I looked it up. I'm assuming the second T in his last name is silent. So Terry Fontenot, I believe is how you say it. Do you want to hear something funny about the Kirk Cousins thing?
Okay.
He was fined $50,000 for violating the anti-tampering policy when it came to the Kirk Cousins deal. So realistically, Arthur Blank probably paid it off. The Falcons and their GM were fined $50,000 to bring in a guy who's not even going to see through the first season of his deal.
It's, I mean, on so many levels. So many levels. It is a crazy situation.
It's ridiculous. It's wild. And it's just, it kind of just goes to show that, you know, there's a reason why sometimes bad teams stay bad. And all due respect to, I mean, not even all due respect, like the Falcons has just been bad for a while now.
We all knew that Kirk was going to get overpaid, and you needed to overpay to get him. But to be in the situation that Atlanta was, and then again, just completely mismanage what's going on. And I know that a lot of their issues have been quarterback driven over the past few weeks. I mean, he threw, 1 touchdown in 4 games?
Yeah, like 1 touchdown and 9 picks.
Really bad. Yeah. I'm not sitting here and I'm not saying he doesn't deserve to be benched. But, like, that is so bad. It's so bad, dude. And, yeah, they did also lose 4 in a row before beating the Raiders 15-9.
Yeah. They were just barely avoiding a last-second Hail Mary, to say the very least. So, that's it's tough times. And, you know, Rick mentioned it earlier, like, we make jokes about the Jets and the Giants, but, like, I think Kirk Cousins to San Francisco could be legit. He's got that connection to Kyle Shanahan, right? Indianapolis. Kyle
Shanahan is one of the very few people in the entire world that I feel knows how to manage a quarterback in a system.
Yeah, and very much could be a case where Kirk Cousins going there would make sense. I think Kirk Cousins to Indianapolis, if they're still not fully sold on Anthony Richardson, I think Kirk Cousins to I had another team in my head, but I completely lost it. You know, if the Dolphins had never agreed to the Tua contract, I think Kirk Cousins to Miami could have made a little bit of sense, to say the very least.
Makes sense still. I mean, he's not going to have to take a ton of money, but he's also going to want to be a starter. So
yeah. I think wherever he goes, it's going to be a case where he's going to. If the Steelers don't want Fields or Wilson after this year, Kirk Cousins for a 1-year deal there.
the Broncos. You can look at the Saints. You look at the Raiders.
I think Bo Nix has kind of gotten the job for himself. I know he had a really bad Thursday night, but I think for the most part, Bo Nix has kind of given them some
You could
hope.
look at the Steelers.
I know I said that.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
there's a number of different teams.
Oh, 100%. So it should be very interesting to say the very least here. Podfather, you still there? Yeah, we may have hit some rocky roads in the car diaries of a Podfather, just trying to make his way in this world, to say the very least. I have no idea if he's still there or not. I'm hearing audio from him, but I don't know if he can hear us or if he can even speak to us.
Move out of the way!
Ah, there it is.
Move out of the snow! Move out of the way!
I don't even know if this is a bit or this is a real thing that he's
what?
screaming.
Yeah, neither do I. I think he genuinely got upset with some other drivers just now.
I get it. It happens to me all the time.
That Long Island life.
You don't understand, dude. It's
I don't.
rough.
I don't. All right. Well, lads, that concludes our 2024 holiday headlines for the NFL. That was a good amount of discussion right there. It was good times, good talks, to say the very least.
I'm alive.
He's back. Better than ever. Well, Podfather, it's perfect that you're back. We have gone through. Well, Rick, did you have any more to say about the Kirk Cousins and Falcons situation before we move on here?
Kirk Cousins to the Panthers sounds pretty good too.
Ah, there we go. I mean, he does scream David Tepper quarterback, eh? Let us go, ladies and gentlemen, and let's go back. Well, not go back. We missed it. We skipped at the start of the show because it's always better when it's both Rick and I here. But ladies and gentlemen, it is time for the favorite game that has completely swept aside all other games in the creation of the show's history. It is time, one and all, for another rendition of Name That Player. Justin, the floor is yours.
All right. Well, being born in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, this player went to college at the University of Delaware and played for 4 different NFL teams.
Why do I feel like this is too easy?
Why?
I'm trying to think of a good old Delaware alumni who made it to the NFL now.
There's
Who
only
is it, Rick?
one name that I can think of.
There's only. I can't think of anyone else. Are we both thinking the same guy, Rick?
Well, that's the only thing that I'm thinking of. Was he born in Philadelphia? He doesn't sound like a Philly guy, does he?
Wait, hold up. Is your player on offense or defense?
Offense.
Okay, so is mine.
Yeah. I don't think he was born in. Was he born in Philadelphia? That kid. That's the only thing that doesn't track because Ravens, Jets, Browns, and Colts.
Ravens, Jets, Browns, and Colts. That's not the quartet that I was thinking of. Then again, I don't even know if this guy played for 4 teams. So we're actually thinking of different players, I think.
Okay, so you're definitely thinking of somebody different then.
Yeah, I definitely am. Shall I give my guess and you give your guess before Justin says either of us are right or wrong?
Give your guess.
Right.
That's fine. Yeah, give your guess first. Yeah.
My guess is Rich Gannon. I know he went to Delaware. I don't know if he played for 4 teams, and I don't know if he was born in Philly.
Rick, who's your guess?
Joe Flacco.
Wow, 2 quarterbacks. I will say that these are the only. No, they're not the only 2, but Jerg, Rich Gannon.
Woo!
Oh,
What a call.
See, here's why
It is funny that there are 2 players that fit.
Yes, but Joe Flacco was born, and this is why I know this. I feel like I've said this before. The first time I took the SAT in high school, I had to go to Audubon, New Jersey to take it. Don't ask me why I had to leave the state of New York to take my SAT the first time, but I had to. And I went to Audubon High School in Audubon, New Jersey, and they had a Joe Flacco cutout there. Audubon High School proudly shows, Audubon, New Jersey is proud to say that Joe Flacco was born there. So if Rick had said his guess first and I didn't have my Gannon guess, I wouldn't have gone with that because I know he wasn't born in Philly.
I mean, Audubon's close to Philly, though. It's got to be. It's like Central Jersey, I think, right?
No, it's very close. I stayed in a hotel overnight in Philadelphia before going to Audubon, New Jersey.
Oh, there you go. Yeah.
So
okay.
So
right.
it is close, to be fair to you, but by geography, it is New Jersey.
Yeah,
So wait. That means that in the last month and a half of doing this show, we've not only had a Brad Johnson reference, but now we have a Rich Gannon reference?
Yes, sir.
Were you studying the 0-2 Super Bowl rosters or something, Justin? Come on now.
I may have been. No, actually, there's literally no. Usually, I have like some sort of like, oh, this makes me think of that, which makes me think of that. Jorg was like, "Who's your name that player today?" And I was like, "Rich Gannon."
There you go.
That's the whole thought process. There was nothing that had to do with anything else.
Okay, that's fair.
So now we know almost nothing about Rich Gannon because you guys guessed it on the first try. And
well, that's unfortunate.
Do you want to give us the next two rounds real quick? Of like what were the next sets?
No, it's going to be something about him making 2 All-Pros and the most valuable player, as well as being the second player to ever go to from the University of Delaware to go to the Super Bowl. And then I probably would have, I don't know, given you some details about his career being selected 4th overall by the Patriots, believe it or not.
The
tried to
tuck
convert
rule.
him to a different position, but then was traded to Minnesota before he started his career.
Wow. Look at that. Oh, I feel like we probably would have gotten in on the third round of guesses. Maybe not the second, but I think probably round 3 would have came. So
Could have also said he was featured in Backyard Football 2002, and I would have been like, oh, okay, I know who they were talking about now. Got it.
There we go. So if that if that Buccaneers and Raiders Super Bowl has been key for us, just wait until we get the Dexter Jackson named that player, Rick.
Woo! I can't wait for that.
So that'll be a good one to say the very least. One of like the most forgotten Super Bowl MVPs because he's a champion, he's an MVP, and he did nothing else for the rest of his career.
Nothing.
No other individual accolades.
Not a thing.
So, just a good pull. It was just pure luck that Rick and I immediately knew 2 Delaware quarterbacks. So it was kind of a shot in the dark there, all things considered. That's a good thing.
You want another one real quick?
I also think Justin went easy on me because he knows that I'm driving and that I would, basically have no time to think of anybody else. So I went with the first thing that went in my head. So I appreciate that.
I'll give you guys another quick one if you want. You gotta bang out answers though.
I'm not.
Sure, what the hell? Why not?
Why not?
All right. This person was born in Bloomington, Indiana, went to college in Florida, and was a first-round pick.
Wait, like just in Florida in general, the state, or specifically the Florida?
He went to Florida.
Okay.
He was a Gator.
Born in Indiana.
First-round picks out of Florida, guys.
Big about. Was he a first-round pick? I don't know if he was. I also have no idea if he was born in Indiana. He doesn't feel like he was born in Indiana. I'd be shocked if he was born in Indiana. I also don't know if he's a first-round pick.
Interesting. Okay.
All right, I will give my first guess just so we could like keep it moving here. I don't think he was born in Indiana, but Percy Harvin.
Ooh, that's a good guess. It's not Percy Harvin.
But he was a first round pick, right? Or am I missing?
I think so.
All right, so I was 2 out of 3 there.
Dante Fowler.
Oh, another good guess. It is not Dante Fowler. All right, we'll go to the next clue. He played for 3 NFL teams, although he was on the practice squad for 2 towards the end of his career. does have a Super Bowl appearance with one of his teams, with his first team, I believe, before fading into obscurity, signing with a couple other teams, and then ultimately blitzing out of the NFL.
No, this guy went to Florida State, not Florida. Or wait. Wait, you say how many teams did he properly play for?
3.
See, there is a player that immediately came to my mind who fits this description, but I don't think he was born in Indiana. And if we're specifically saying he went to Florida like as a Gator, this guy in my head went to Florida State, so it's not him.
Yeah, he's a Gator.
All right.
Yeah, I'm really not up with the rest of my Florida Gators alumni terminology here. This is a tough one.
I'm shocked with you, Rick. Seems like one that would be right up your alley.
No, you know what? I never liked playing with them when I was playing the NCAA games. I was never really a big Florida guy, so I never really, and at that time too, it was like, that was also when the basketball team was winning 2 titles in a row, and I was done with them because I hate teams that are like constantly winning. See my Yankees fandom, lack thereof, So, I'm trying to think.
I feel like we have to go back in this one. I don't think it's any because I'm trying recent Florida Gators who went in the first round, like Kyle Pitts, but he doesn't fit the bill. C.J. Henderson, he's a bum. So I feel like we'd have to go pretty far, maybe not pretty far back, but like a relatively far back here.
I'm trying to think of who was anybody of any significance on this team, on these teams. Like the quarterbacks aren't significant, because it's Tebow and that's it, really. Unless maybe there is a significance to it. A name just popped in my head. He did go to Florida. He did play in a Super Bowl, but I don't know if that was his first team that he was on. And he played for 3? Maybe. All right. I'll lock this name in for my next guess. I'll lock it in. Rex Grossman.
Hit it, Rick. Yep, it's Rex Grossman. Yep.
There we go.
That's right.
Wow.
Way to go.
A couple quarterbacks here for you, Justin.
Damn.
So you're going to find out he was a quarterback with the next guess. I was going to give you some stats. Finished his career with 10,000 passing yards, 56 touchdowns, and 60 interceptions. He actually threw 20 interceptions in 2 different seasons in the NFL.
Jesus.
You want to talk about a bad Super Bowl that he was in? That one was atrocious.
Did he throw multiple pick sixes in that Super Bowl?
It was a low-scoring game.
Well, it was raining. It was a horrible atmosphere for the game. It was Peyton's first win, right?
It was literally just Peyton Manning versus Brian Urlacher.
Yeah, and Prince played halftime. And that's really all you need to know about it.
Yeah, 29-17 game, searching it up. Rex Grossman threw 2 interceptions there. I don't know if both were pick sixes. I think one of them was. Peyton Manning, only 1 touchdown, 1 interception in that game. Yet I'm almost certain he got Super Bowl MVP there. Of course he did. So there's that. Look at that. Back-to-back name that players and back-to-back QBs from Justin to us. All right, good stuff there, Justin. Let's continue to the meat and potatoes of the show. And might we have a new champion here soon enough? Ladies and gentlemen, it's time for the hashtag SAOC Pick Challenge, where on a week-by-week basis, Rick, Justin, and I go around the NFL landscape, pick from the course of games on a 4-to-1 basis scale. 4 points our most confident, 1 point our least confident. We must all pick at least one upset pick based on who is favored heading into a game. The upset pick can be at our lowest, used for our 2-pointer. Cannot be used for, it can be used for a 1-pointer, but it can't be your only one. You can go for a tie if you do so choose. It can only be used for your 4-point pick, which gets upgraded to a 5-point pick if you hit it. I think we've gone through everything. I think I went through everything, except for the fact that the way that we get our lines, who's favored, who's not, we get that from our friends at
ESPN Bet.
There we go. Now, Rick, I know that you're on the road, so I don't know if you have this written down anywhere. You don't need to give like the typical full breakdown you give, but you could just give the people the standings here before we go into the selections for ourselves.
I was at the little gym this morning with my daughter, and then shoveled snow off of the yard, and I've been busy all week, so I don't have anything on me. What I do know, though, is that I think there were 2 perfect weeks last week, if I'm not mistaken. Neither one by you or I.
Yeah, it wasn't by us.
So I know. So what I do know, because here's what I do know. What I do know is that Justin went into the week down by 1.
Yes.
Perfect week. He had 101 going in. He's at 112 now.
I'm at 108.
Jerry's at 108. What I also know is that the Gopher had a perfect week to go from 69 to 80. And I think I only hit on 1. So I think he's got me beat by 1 point or 2 points at the moment. So I'm in last place.
And this is big for both of us, Rick, because if Justin extends this lead on me, I think he would legitimately have a chance to wrap this up before we get to the last week of the season.
Well, but then the drama would be whether or not I can actually, beat the Gopher if I'm, still behind at this point.
So
that's what I'm interested in, especially because you're the one that makes the picks for the Gopher.
Well,
right.
yeah, it's funny that I could hit well on 1, and then the other one I'm a total knob. But
didn't we kind of have a feeling this was going to happen to Rick eventually, that the mascot was going to beat him one of these times?
Yeah, I mean, he's so against picking chalk that it's like such a detriment to his score. Like that he's better than this, but like at the same time, he's like, I just got these gut feelings about these games.
13, 14, 15. So we have 15. I guess the good thing for Rick is we have 15 games to choose from. So the Gopher is only going to get 3. And because it's a 3-point week, he will not get a points multiplier because three games is a pretty full slate for him. So there's only 6 points the Gopher could get this week. So the Podfather has a chance here to make up some ground.
Truthfully, if we had done this and had the Thursday night game, I would have taken the Chargers for myself. So I'm glad that game's off the board.
We'll give you the Chargers for 2 points to catch the Gopher if you want.
No, listen. Let's not curb favor. We're a show of integrity, except when Justin curses, because then we lose all our glamour. Let's just keep it the way that it is for right now.
Which I've been told by the higher ups, Justin, the penalty will be more severe if you break the cursing record next time.
What's the record?
Whatever you just did.
Whatever you did recently.
No, I didn't curse last week. I only at the end.
No, I'm not talking about last week. I'm talking about like weeks before that with that one show.
I don't remember.
I think you cursed 5 or 6 times. I've been told by higher ups if you do that again, then there could be issues. Because yes, we are, while the 3 of us are on the show, are the faces. Well, for the most part, there is a higher power than us.
Yeah,
And,
Justin. Basically, here's what happened because I caught wind of this conversation. Basically,
what do you mean you caught wind? You were in the
mother
room.
And your father spoke about this and determined that if you curse one more time on the show, you are banished for 3 weeks, and they will draft for you next in the 2025 season.
The whole 2025 season?
No, just
the whole
the first
2025 season. Yep.
I thought it was just the first 3 weeks of 2025.
No, I think that kind of depends upon other factors, but that's that they're floating that idea around there. I think.
While we continue to move on there, let's get on to it. So yes, Justin is ahead of me. You said Justin has 112, right? So Justin has a 4-point lead in the pick challenge at the moment, ladies and gentlemen. It is a throwback to season 1 between he and I. So we go through this. So I have the middle pick then. So we go in a serpentine draft order. So I have the middle pick here. So Rick will start. I'll go. Justin has back-to-back picks. Me, Rick, back-to-back. Boom, boom, boom. All right, Rick, you start us off.
I mean, look, I've had fun picking all upsets, but let's kind of be honest here. That's kind of why I am where I am right now, right? Picking all upsets for all weeks. So please hit on this one. Buffalo over 4 points.
I'm going to guess he picked the Bills there.
Please. I need Buffalo to win this game.
Rick?
Yeah.
Rick, we missed it. Who'd you pick?
Yeah, please, the Bills. I need a Buffalo win. Yeah, okay. I need Buffalo to win.
It's a good pick.
Yeah, that's a really good pick. All right. I am looking at mine.
Now
There's
watch them
definitely-
lose.
Yeah, Bills are favored by 14 points against the Patriots, just so that people know. I will go with, for my 4-point pick, we talked a lot about them already this episode. I'll believe in them. Give me the Detroit Lions.
That's a good pick. I'm going to go with my 4-point pick. I'm going to go with the Packers, and then I'm going to do something that I'm not used to doing, and I'm going to pick an upset with my 3-point pick. It's usually something I avoid, but I only really like one upset this week, and I wouldn't even say I really like it. It's a tough week for upsets. I'm going to pick the Jags over the Raiders.
Interesting. Okay.
All right, nice. I'm helping out the pod. I'm helping out the Podfather, by the way. I'm going to send this to our chat so that way Rick has an easier time, so he doesn't have to go back to the episode.
Oh, good.
For this. All right, my turn. So for my 3-point pick, I'm so very torn here because there's 2 games that I'm looking at that I'd be relatively confident in. Well, one of them lesser so. I mean, I don't know. I'll pick them with my 2, but then I kind of have to go upset pick here with my 3. Oh, this is so tough. Frick. You know what? Fortune favors the bold, right?
Sometimes.
Sometimes. This pick will either give me a good shot to keep pace with Justin, or it'll cost me the title for this season. 3-point upset. Give me the Ring of Honor, Geno Smith and the Seattle Seahawks against the Vikings.
Love it.
Stolen upset from under my nose. That's fine.
I had
That's
to, Rick.
fine.
I had to.
I know. I know.
Vikings need that game too much.
Desperate times call for desperate measures. I get it there. All right. 3 points for me. I know we discussed it, but I also believe that there's got to be some magic, and because they're playing a good a defense that warrants a chance for them to lose this game. Give me the debuting Michael Penix and the Falcons over the Giants at 3 points.
All right.
Give me that one. Now, for my upset, I'm a little torn. I have 4 picks to choose from, but I forget who everyone's playing. So if you'll indulge me, that would be much appreciated.
I have the schedule up, so tell me who you're thinking.
Cleveland.
Cleveland is taking on Cincinnati in Cincinnati.
Okay. San Francisco.
They are taking on the Dolphins in Miami.
That's an upset pick, right?
No, the Niners are actually favored by 1 right now as of today.
Are they? Okay.
Yes.
All right. I guess that makes sense. Okay. So then scrap that one. The other site that I have too that I do my other pool in, it has the Dolphins as the favorites. So
yeah,
fair.
You go either way.
And then Dallas.
Dallas is the underdog by 4.5 points in Dallas
Against Tampa Bay.
Against Tampa, yes, my bad. Against Tampa.
Give me the Cowboys. Let's have some fun with the NFC South. Give me the Cowboys over the Bucks.
Okay, I'm noting that is his upset pick. Boom. All right, we have that. All right, my 2-point pick now. A good amount of games to select from. Pick some middle games there. Jameis is questionable going into the Bengals game?
Yeah.
Shoulder.
I thought I saw somewhere DTR was starting.
Huh. Very interesting. I mean, I haven't seen that confirmed. I mean, the Bengals have been kind of the hot hand for me the last couple of weeks. Yeah, they've won 2 of the last 3 weeks. They also lost me a bunch before that. So the fact the Bengals gave up 44 to the Steelers is ridiculous. Hey, the Bengals need this one to keep their playoff hopes alive. I will stick with the team that I've been running hot with. Give me the Cincinnati Bengals for my 2-point pick.
That's fair.
So remind me who the last 2 were. Cincinnati and who?
So I picked Cincinnati for my 2-pointer. Rick picked the Cowboys for his 2-point upset. Both you and I went with 3-point upsets, Justin. I went with the Seahawks. You went with the Jaguars.
Take Philly.
Not bad. Not bad. Let me just note that. Eagles over the Commanders for the division. All right,
And then I need a 1-pointer. I forgot that I'm going back to back. I'm not used to this.
It's been a while because for the most part, you and I have been lockstep in 1-2 for most of the season.
It's funny because I really, really, really want to pick a game, but I'm not going to break the rules here. I'll take the Niners.
Okay. Let me note that.
Because they haven't screwed me yet this year, right?
Crazy. All right, my turn for my 1-pointer. As Justin loses video, so I'm the only one on the screen left for the people. That is a horrible thing for the people. There's literally no visual appeal on this show at the moment. There we go. Now we have the appeal. Now we had some appeal. All right. 1-pointer. All right. Justin picked the Packers. Rick picked the Cowboys. Justin just picked the Dolphins. Well, we've picked every single 4 p.m. And primetime game for this week, which is kind of crazy for between Sunday and Monday. This is a tough one. I hate you, Indianapolis. What did they do for me? They won last week. They do need that. How's this team trending? They only scored 14. He is playing better, but I don't know if I necessarily have that much faith. All right. Bit of a tough one here, but I'm going to go with my 1-point pick, the Arizona Cardinals. They're taking on the Carolina Panthers. So give me Arizona in that juncture. So Rick, your 1-point pick, and then give us the 3, 2, and 1 selections for Utah the Gopher.
Jurg, I hope you get bombed by a Bosnian for stealing 2 of my picks.
Hey, pretty mean.
Herzegovinian, maybe? So all right. So what games are remaining on the docket? Just so I know.
Yes, sir. Let me go through it right now. I got you. So remaining games: the Texans-Chiefs game that happens in about over an hour's time is up for grabs. Okay. The Steelers-Ravens game for 4:30 today is up for grabs. Baltimore is favored by 7 in Baltimore. Kansas City is favored by 3.5 in Kansas City over the Texans. Rams-Jets in New York. Rams are a 3-point favorite.
Yep.
And Titans-Colts is the last game in Indianapolis. Indianapolis? Yeah, I said that. Colts are favored by 3.5.
Yeah, give me the Colts there because I know the Titans are changing quarterbacks, and I don't trust that. So give me the Colts with that one.
All right. And then the Gopher now has his 3 picks, 3, 2, and 1.
Jets, Chiefs, and Ravens.
Which is the so Jets with a 3-point upset for the Gopher.
Yep.
All right, let me lock that in for you. Upset. If I could spell. You said Chiefs and Ravens, correct? In that order?
Yep. Chiefs,
Ravens. I now understand how the Podfather feels having to do all the record keeping. All right. So to recap for the people, I will do the recap for all of us on this week. The Podfather, as he is fighting to maintain the last spot on this podium for the season, he went with his 4-point pick, the Bills, over the Patriots. He went 3-point pick, Falcons over the Giants. He goes with a 2-point Dallas upset over the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, which would be massive in the NFC South showdown, with Rick also picking the Falcons there, so it could work out in that favor. And he picked the Colts with a 1-point selection over the Tennessee Titans. Me, as I try to keep my bid of becoming the first ever 2-time champion in the history of this game alive, I went with the Detroit Lions with my 4-point pick against the Chicago Bears. I went with the Seattle Seahawks with my 3-point upset pick over the Minnesota Vikings. I went with the Bengals over the Browns with my 2-point pick. And I went with the Cardinals over the Carolina Panthers with my 1-point pick. Justin, the current leader and the man who could finish his story, or maybe he's Kevin Owens. Justin Owens or Kevin Zucker? I don't know. He went with the Packers over the Saints with his 4-pointer. He went with the Jaguars over the Raiders with his 3-point upset pick. He went with the Eagles over the Commanders with his 2-point pick, and the 49ers over the Miami Dolphins with his 1-point pick. And Utah the Gopher goes with a Jets 3-point upset pick against the Rams, a Chiefs 2-point win, 2-point victory over the Texans, and a Ravens 1-pointer over the Pittsburgh Steelers. So we'll know most of the Gophers week by the end of today. Sent to the chat. And with that being and with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us on the pick challenge this week. We have one final segment, and it should be a good one. It is towards the end of the year, and just so the people are not scared, the Podfather is busy, like you said, so we're not going to have the good old holiday Christmas rant this time, ladies and gentlemen, but we do have another rant for you all, because as you know, it is perfection via the Podfather. What he does, ladies and gentlemen. This man has given us quality rants throughout the year. This is going to be, Rick, if I'm not mistaken, this is the last rant podium scheduled for this year, right? Or is my scheduling wrong here?
Well, I don't know what we're doing next week for picks or for shows, but it probably is the last one for the year, yeah.
Yeah, so a last final, rant-ish podium of the year before we have the big old one for next week, which is going to be fun. So before you get into this list, Rick, for this week's rant podium, vamp for me a little bit as you get ready here, because I have a lower third to create. So do it for me, bud.
Oh, sure. Yeah, sure. So, when it comes to Christmas time, when it comes to all of this and all the rants, podiums, and all that, it's harder to be able to kind of dictate what I want for the podium. So behind the process, I basically go through every rant podium that I do during the year to come up with a Christmas themed thing. But then, you try and make it Christmas themed where it's like you basically do a cover or something. Well, for the fans at home, I spun the wheel of chaos earlier, and it landed on Utah the Ranceless Gopher to the tune of Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. You're not getting that this year because the Gopher doesn't deserve that, and also I literally have had zero time this week for any of that, which I do apologize for. However, there is, of course, what do we call it? End of year naughtiness, because no one I listen to yell at does anything nice. Yes, absolutely. No one I yell at dies anything nice there, Jared? Come on now. Editing. Thank you. Okay. Alrighty. Okay. Are we ready to go now, or are we still vamping?
It's all yours. Go for it.
Oh, thank you. Appreciate that. Well, to be fair, you did kind of steal my number 3 spot, which was Brick Johnson and whatever the other stupid son's name is. So I had to think of a third one on the fly, and it's a simple one. It's a classic one, but it every year it keeps going. People who don't know how to drive in the snow or in the ice. Like, when did the Northeast become like the Southeast, where all of a sudden we see an inch of snow on the ground or a coating of snow, and nobody knows how to park in the parking lots or drive on the roads? I went to the grocery store this morning with my wife and my daughter and tried to park in the infant parking spot and couldn't because the jerk next to me was like 4 feet over the line, so he was in like 2 spaces and also parked diagonally. Like, what is it about driving in bed whether these people worse drivers than they usually are, So I almost want to say the driving test should only be taken in a snowstorm or in a rainstorm. Like, I know you say perfect conditions for driving, but let's be honest here. If you had to drive in a rainstorm every day for the rest of your life, you'd know how to drive better in it. But you don't. So, either driving tests in rainstorms or revocation of licenses. And Jurg, as you, somebody who just got a license to drive recently, I think you'll understand that and appreciate that. Because let me tell you something. There are worse people on the roads here than you'll ever realize. Number 2 on my list. This is something that I'm going to skirt a line here. We're a family-friendly show. And the topic that I'm going to discuss is not necessarily family-friendly if you have a certain belief in what a relationship should be. But this is just something that I just don't understand. Like, why is this a thing? Thruples. Why does this exist? What is the benefit of having this? Like, what? So basically you're telling me that you found somebody and you found somebody else who has the qualities that you like better that the person that you found initially doesn't have. Like, then just go leave the other person. Like, I don't get it. Why? 3? I understand 3 is a magic number in some songs for Schoolhouse Rock, but 3 is a crowd and 3 is company. Like, what are we doing? Why? And don't even get me started on the swingers. I'm not even going to get to them because, again, family-friendly show. But number 1 on my list is a man who I believe that I should have been in the spot that he's currently in right now. And I'm bitter about it because he's a bitter Grinch. And he deserves to have all of our scorn and all of our disdain. Doug Gottlieb, nobody you just beat you, and you are 2-11, probably 2-12 now, and you've never been a head coach before ever. And all you want to do is just rant on Schefter and go on social media instead of, doing the thing you're supposed to do and coaching your team. So, I don't know. Maybe it's just me. Maybe guys who are in the media shouldn't become head coaches. But, it's stupid to think that that's part of what we're doing nowadays is having somebody who has no clue what they're doing being a head coach of a team. So, to Doug Gottlieb, I say, I hope you get the Urban Meyer treatment and get thrown off on your head and out of Green Bay after the next 2 or 3 games because you deserve nothing better than to not be head coach of a team anymore like that. So that's my story. I'm sticking to it. Again, as a reminder, if you go on this list, it's because you're not doing a very good thing or you're stupid. So in 2025, there will be even more of these, but also even less caring on my part to, try and be, because again, if I lose to the Gopher, I have to work blue. So you know what? I'll double down on it. All of 2025, if I lose to the Gopher, all of 2025, the Rant Podium is blue. You will get a full year of the Podfather swearing during the Rant Podium. A full year of it. I've had it. I'm done.
And with that, as he might be losing his mind from all the pressures of life and society bearing down on his shoulders, thank you for joining us on this edition of the Sports Agents of Chaos podcast, ladies and gentlemen. The NFL gave us plenty to talk about. Some topics that will be resolved in the short term. Some topics that will be, we'll see the long-term ramifications of it. We'll see how it spreads into this offseason and probably even into next season and beyond that. So it'll be very interesting. We had fun with the pick challenge once again. Great name that players from Justin, of course. Pick challenge. We'll see what the state of it is next week. We had an amazing Rant Podium. It's going to be a bit weird next week because we're definitely want to we're going to want to get the Christmas games in. We'll see, ladies and gentlemen. So you will see us next week as we make some holiday Christmassy themed picks. And ultimately, we will get closer to the best time of the year, postseason football. Thank you so much for joining us on this week's edition of Fun Football and Chaos. And we will see you guys next time for what will be, I believe, the final episode of 2024 from us. All of us to you. Enjoy. Probably see you before then, but happy holidays to all of you. Take care.